Hi, okay, I apologize for the music in the background. My child just discovered the radio option on her toy car, which is fantastic. Anyways, we're going to discuss Chapter 6 of To Kill a Mockingbird in this video. I'll try to keep it short, under 5 minutes. I never do, but I'll try. One thing about this chapter that you should know is that this is the last hurrah of this particular summer. So Dill and Jem and Scout are kind of set loose in the neighborhood, and Dill's going to leave the next day back to Mississippi, which is where he lives, and he takes off for in the winter time to go to school. So the first part of this chapter, starting on page 67, is kind of a fun little story that I actually missed the first several times I've read this book. Like, I probably read this book 4 or 5 times without really realizing this or taking much notice of this scene. But they talk about Mr. Avery, and they see him doing something off his porch, and they're not sure. And Scout, who is the narrator here, she's pretty vague about the details, but she does talk about, and I think this goes on to page 68, an arc of water descending from the leaves and splashing in the yellow circle of the street lights, some 10 feet from the source to the earth. So what she's talking about is they actually see Mr. Avery peeing off the porch. And the boys are the kids. And the boys are actually impressed because it's like 10 feet away from where he's standing. So they get into a little peeing contest. And what's, funny about, the story's funny in itself, I think, the fact that the kids notice this and then they decide to have a little contest of their own. But it's actually interesting, too, because it brings up the idea of Scout turning into or realizing that she's different than Jem and Dill, and they're little boys and she's a little girl. And she says they figured that he must drink a gallon of water a day, and then they had a contest to determine relative distances and respective prowess, which made her feel left out again because she was untalented in this area, which I'm assuming you can guess why Scout would not be able to compete with Jem and Dill in that little game. Anyway, I thought it was funny. I thought I'd call your attention to it because it's so subtle I missed it several times. So anyways, what this chapter really is about is Dill and Jem want to go and sneak in and peek into Boo Radley's window, which is interesting to them still. They're obsessed with Boo Radley. And of course, Scout, as usual, she's not really into this game. She doesn't want to be part of this. Now, one thing that Jem says to her on page 69 when she's trying to talk them out of doing this and to going into the Boo Radley yard, he says, "I declare you're getting more like a girl every day," and that shuts her up. And again, that speaks to, she's trying to resist growing up and coming of age and finding her role. Remember, this is the 1930s, and the idea of being a proper girl is very different back then than it may be today. So she resists that. She shuts up after she's being called a girl, even though that's exactly what she is, and she tags along. One thing that they have to do when Jem and Dill are sneaking into the Boo Radley yard is they have to go through the gate, and I don't know if you can see this that well, but so there's like a wooden gate that they have to get through, and it's squeaky, and so how they open it without making it squeak too much is they spit on it. And so that's what they mean when they're spitting on the gate. They're just spitting on the hinges so that they can open it without it squeaking and making a bunch of noise. They get in, and Jem is the one who actually goes to look at the window. And I don't know if you understand what goes on or why they're all freaked out when they are when he's looking in the window, and you can kind of see, this is another still from the movie itself. So there's a shadow. They can see the shadow of a man, and Scout thinks it's a tree at first. And she's like, oh yeah, trees don't move like that. And they see this here, you kind of see the hand. She sees the hat, and she sees it moving like a man, obviously not like a tree. And they don't actually see who's creating the shadow, and we have to make guesses as to who it is. I'm going to tell you right now, I think it's Boo Radley himself. And so once they leave, they take off because the shadow doesn't actually do anything to him. The shadow just passes on. They hear gunshots, and I guess that is Mr. Nathan Radley. So that's Boo Radley's brother. Boo Radley's brother, remember, takes over when Mr. Radley, Boo's dad, had died. So Mr. Nathan Radley shot off his gun when he heard the noises, and that's why I think it's Boo, because they don't think it's a woman. The shadow doesn't look like that of a female, it looks like a man, she says. And so it doesn't seem like it would be Mrs. Radley. And Mr. Nathan Radley, if he had seen that there were kids, he probably wouldn't have shot at them. I'm going to go ahead and assume. So as they're escaping, Jim has to leave his shorts behind. And that's because they get caught on the wire of the fence somehow. And so he just takes them off and they skedaddle through. They also have to pretend like they don't know what's going on. If you hear shotgun firing off in your Atticus, you're probably going to wonder what your kids are up to this time. And so the kids kind of play it cool. They circle back and they run into the neighborhood where everyone is kind of come out of their house and wondering what's going on. One thing they don't realize is that, until it's too late, is that Jim still doesn't have his pants on. And that looks obviously really weird to all the neighbors. Okay, so where are your pants, Jim? What gives you really good insight about this society or this community here is the excuses that they give and the reactions to it. There are two excuses that these kids give. Dill comes up with the first one, which is that they were playing strip poker. And Jim comes up with the second one, which is they were playing with matches. Now, let's think about this. What would you prefer if you had a kid? Which would you rather than play with cards or with fire? And this community, they actually think that the cards is worse. Playing poker, she says something like matches were deadly, but poker was fatal. And what that means is that playing poker is a sin to them. So they don't even care about the stripping part. I mean, as much as they do the fact that they're playing cards. So Jim changes the story. He's like, no, we're just playing with matches. And Atticus, the community's calmed down. And then Atticus says, well, you need to get your shorts back, Jim. And the fight that Jim and Scout get into after that, because Jim wants to go back and actually get his shorts, but Scout doesn't want him to. Obviously, they've just been shot at, and now Jim wants to go back and risk getting shot at again just to get his shorts and avoid getting caught. But Jim does go back, and that's kind of something that creates a rift in them. He gets away with it, and he doesn't get caught. Dill doesn't see that last part of it, because after Atticus tells him to get their shorts, Dill heads off for the summer, and you're not going to see, for the winter, and you're not going to see Dill for the rest of the summer. All right, I'm up to almost 8 minutes, so I'm going to stop talking now. That's it, chapter 6.